Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down a smart restock bulk storage by Kizu and classified with help from Maker. Now, this is a super cheap bulk that's very clean, and it's a smart restocking bulk, so let's get straight into it. So what is a smart restocking bulk storage? Well, a smart restocking bulk storage, if I go all the way through here, is a system that is a bulk storage, so it has a huge amount of items already sorted or stored, and it sorts boxes automatically in this system. And what it does is, for example, if this chest gets empty, it will unlock the slice to allow more items to start flowing down into the chest. So that way you don't have to like manually unlock the slice and then let it relock again. So how it does this is it uses, or how it sorts the items is it's using Acacia's box sorter, or Acacia Chan's box sorter, and it has this logic right here. Now, I won't be breaking down the individual box sorter because I have broken down that system individually as an individual video, as well as in other bulk storage videos. So I really just want to focus on the unique logic for the system and how all of the other parts come together to make this amazing system. So what happens is the item gets dropped down on this tripwire right here. And this actually updates these two tripwire hooks, which causes a bud in this piston right here, as you can see, like there. It updates the piston because it's getting power from its own block of redstone. So it's kind of a weird mechanic, but that's just a bud or block update detector. Now, what happens then is because this gets moved over here, it will then power this redstone wire right here. That will unpower this redstone torch. Unpowering this redstone torch causes this redstone wire to unpower, causing this repeater to no longer power, so it unlocks these two hoppers right here, allowing the item to travel all the way down. Now, when the item makes its way to here, it will power this, or update this comparator to power this gray concrete to turn off this redstone torch, which will unpower this redstone wire and turn on this redstone torch, so it keeps this piston extended. And one key thing to note is there is an observer readout coming from this, and this will only happen when the system depowers, because this note block is being powered right now by this redstone torch powering this block, keeping it powered. But when this comparator turns on, it'll keep it powered, so only when this turns off and there's a small break between this turning off and this redstone torch repowering, will this observer update and quasi-connectivity power this piston here to move it over here. And yeah, so once it gets unlocked, and all that stuff will happen, it'll the shulker box will come through all the way through here to this dropper, or dispenser, sorry, right here. And this will actually activate, moving the redstone block here, which will update this power this redstone repeater right here to power this hopper, so that we actually lock it so no more items can come through for a short period of time, so we can at least do the key generation and send all these signals down. So it gives a little bit of a spacer. Now, what happens when the shulker box makes its way into this dispenser is quite a few things. One of those being powering this comparator right here, which then goes to do the many things. And what happens is it powers this block right here, which will power this note block and extend this sticky piston to move this block of redstone down one block. Now, this will jumpstart this pulse extender right here, which we do take several signals from. One being to this target block, which will cause this redstone torch to unpower, causing this to power, causing this to unpower, and that will unpower the entirety of this hopper locking line right here, which locks all of these hoppers right here through the dropper. Now, what also happens is we take an output of it to right here, which will cause these two redstone torches to unpower. When it unpowers this redstone torch, it will no longer be powering this block, powering this redstone wire, and what will happen is quite a few signals will be processed. One of these is this line turning on, which will power this line right here, which actually unlocks the system because it's going through redstone torches. So it'll unlock all of these repeaters right here, allowing these hoppers to be unlocked. But we also send a pulse down to here, which is the clock to tell the system to relock. And we'll get into that after we cover the rest of the system. Now, we also have a signal of a brief unpoweredness, where this signal down here gets a brief power or couple of ticks of unpoweredness, which allows these repeaters to unpower as a signal going all the way down, which will keep up with the item, so that way the item can go into these hoppers individually. Now, the same happens to this line right here, coming from the same power to this block, but it's through this repeater to power this block and power this redstone wire, doing the same thing over here. And how it actually repowers is the signal coming from this observer line, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, what also happens is this line right here unpowers, allowing this hopper right here to unlock. So when we place the box then we can actually like take the first item out. And what will happen is this will power, causing this line to unpower. Now that we talked about those signals, we actually can talk about these upper signals right here. So when the shulker box gets in this dispenser right here, it'll power this comparator like we talked about and power this block. Now we talked about the bottom half of the signals, but now let's talk about here. So what happens is it also unpowers this redstone torch, which will update this note block right here, which goes to this observer line to run this. So it powers this dispenser to place the shulker box, and this is in time with this redstone wire depowering, so we take out a singular item for the keygen. Now this will get pushed into this dropper right here. Now what also happens is there is this set of signal right here, this signal right here from this observer, which is reading this observer to power this block, to power this iron trapdoor, to connect it to this white black stained glass pane to repeat the signal. And that creates a loop right here, which we take a few signals from. Now this redstone torch, when it also unpowers, would allow this redstone torch to power. This will actually unpower, powering this block and turning off this redstone torch, which creates the same kind of trick where we wait for the gap between this unpowering coming from this signal right here and the tick delay between this unpowering and allowing this to repower will give a small chance for this dropper to no longer be powered. Using that gap with the dropper right here, we power this or update this observer. When we update this observer, we power this piston right here to shove this redstone block back, allowing this hopper to be live again, as well as taking an observer update right here to power this block, to power this piston right here to push the item back like so. And that's how we prime the system again so it can take more items. Now what also happens is there's this line right here, which stems from the same signal we talked about before to power this note block right here. This will update this line right here to power this block, powering these activator rails right here. Now this will send two updates to this observer and this observer, but the one to this observer powers this observer, which will power this block, powering this note block and powering this piston. So what happens is we place the shulker box down and then we power this piston to break it once we've taken one item out. But you might say, wait, what happens? Because this interval surely can't be that clean. Well, we actually take the other observer output to power this same dust that will be turned off because this redstone torch will be off. But we actually pulse this really quick so that way the shulker or the hopper right here doesn't take out the second item. So that way we can break it by locking it and then we break it, shoving the item over here. Now, when it gets placed, we do take an observer output, we take a comparator output that's observed by these two observers, and this runs a few weird lines right here. One of them being this observer line right here, which goes to this right here to power and lock this repeater right here, which will update all of these observer lines right here, which power this dropper line, which is used for the box sorter, as well as powering this block to power it, so that way we cut off the signal. And then we have another line right here, which goes to this observer, which gets observed by this observer, which causes a little bit of a loop, it causes a loop to go to here to power this piston, which will be quasi-powering this dropper right here, because we power this block to update this piston, to power this dropper to shoot the shulker box in this line right here. And how we get the item from this hopper into this dropper to this dropper is by this same power coming to this block right here to power this dropper right here. Now, we also have a signal going down here through these observers to power this block to send the repower signal for this line right here while this line is still turning back on. And yeah, so that's how we get that line right there, and that obviously connects to this repeater to run this other line. So when we get power to it again, we do the pulse or the gap of non-redstone signals. Talking about this clock right here, so when we actually run the system, we update this redstone wire, which powers this line right here to power this redstone dust right here, which runs back into this clock right here. So from that signal, we power this target block right here. When we power this target block, we actually power this redstone wire right here and turn this on. One thing this will do, we'll power this, is to quasi-power this sticky piston to move this observer down one block, which will be important for the relocking. And what it also does is jumpstart this weird looking clock right here. So what happens is there is a pulse, there's a signal that goes into this comparator right here, which powers this dust with that signal strength of 15. And that will turn off this redstone torch, turning off this redstone wire going to this comparator right here. And what will happen then is it'll turn off this signal right here, which will allow this system to run because this line turns off right here, allowing this wire to turn off and allowing this comparator in subtract mode to go to, or actually power with a signal strength of 1, sending its signal strength of 1 to signal strength of 15 into here, and basically keep this signal repeating. So what this basically is a pulse extender right here at heart, because there's a signal going through into this wire right here. So it's a pulse extender, and every time the pulse extender goes to 0, what happens is it powers this with a signal, or this dust with a signal strength of 1, and subtracting 1 from this signal, which goes to this dust right here. And this dust obviously goes to, through this line to keep this signal alive. So what happens is every time this pulse extender goes to 0, it subtracts the signal strength 15 power by 1. So it'll go 15, this will go to completion again, go to 14, this will go to completion again, 13, and so on and so on. And until, or when this actually unpowers, so once this has run 15 times, this dust right here will unpower and cause this observer to move back up, updating this block, powering this rail line to update this observer line right here, which is to relock the entire system. Now, that is only for this half of the system, because we only unlock half of the system at a time, because why would we unlock both slices if the item or the box we're going to sort, it only goes through this line, or is going to be in this half right here. So what happens is once we get the item all the way through here using our observer line, what actually happens is it'll go to this dropper right here and update this comparator like it's done all the other comparators. But what happens, it'll update this observer to power this block and power this line right here, as well as power this observer line. So that way, once it gets into here, we continue the signal on, but we also power this observer line to power this observer to power this block and update this line right here, which is for the actual shulker box. And by updating this line right here, we update these observers at particular points to power their respective droppers, and then continue the signal on with the regular observer line. And this introduces back the delay that we had from that brain system right there. And this will continue the signal on all the way to here, where it will continue as expected, except for here we actually do a little bit of a turn by powering this activator rail to update this observer to power this observer to power this block to power the dropper right here. And we actually read some of these powerings right here through this observer and this line right here. And to make this corner, we have to do something a little bit weird with the delay. So what happens is we power it with this observer to power this dropper and shoot it into this dropper under the repeater right here. And what we do is actually read an update from that observer to go to this observer, to go to all of this observer to power this block, power this node block, and go through this observer to power this repeater right here, to update this observer to power this node block, to power this node block, to power this dropper right here. And then we can continue the signal like before, like we did on the other side right there. So to actually unlock the system, we take an observer readout from these droppers right here to power this redstone wire and power this pulse extender, which is a slightly less, it's a slower, no, a faster pulse extender, because we take away 1 from the signal already. So it runs slightly less, and we take a couple outputs, or 1 output to this repeater to power this block and power this dust right here, which extends this piston right here to introduce a signal to right here, which will actually run the system. And it actually ran. Yeah, okay. So it actually, we introduce a signal right here by this line right, or this redstone wire right here, to actually do the same clock we saw on the other side, except for this slice right here, running this line right here. And what also happens is we have signals going to this line right here. Oh, not this line, sorry. To this line right here with the previous hopper locking as we intended. So with this line all the way over here. And we have the same line, or a couple bits of redstone, 1 going all the way up here for this line up here, and 1 going all the way through here to run the hopper locking. And at the end here, we just have a simple recombiner, which just basically, if nothing gets sorted, we put the first item back in the box. And that's how we do all the hopper locking. So, or no, sorry, not the hopper locking, the actual box sorting. Now, if you want to see how the box sorter individually works, then you can look at my video like I mentioned before. And the overflow line just goes into here, which goes all the way here to the overflow, and you can just route this to wherever you want. Now it's time to talk about the individual bulk slice, which I think is really, really fascinating. So what happens is, once we make our way through and we actually unlock this piston right here to bring this up, the item will be able to flow through into this chest right here. And once in this chest, this comparator will take an output to power this repeater right here, to power this sticky piston, to move this observer right here. This will quasi-connectivity power this piston right here to move the block of redstone over here. And this is the determinant of whether the system is unlocked or locked. And basically, when this redstone block gets moved over here, we have the note block that will no longer be powered, allowing this piston to actually retracting that entire line that I just completely flew past. And when it retracts, what happens is this redstone block actually moves up here, allowing this sticky piston to no longer be powered, allowing this to retract. Now, what happens here is because this composter gets retracted, first of all, it updates this observer right here, but that's not too important. That's more for the signal of the system actually running, or the smart restocking signal. But what happens is, since the composter get moved away, this comparator will now be unpowered, allowing no power to go to this redstone torch, so it powers, and this will do the or unpower this redstone torch right here, powering this, and basically repeat that signal. And that's how this system does it, and it's, I believe, one of the cheapest bulks I've ever seen, because instead of using a redstone block slider, which can be quite expensive, it uses this redstone torch mechanic. And it's kind of ingenious in my opinion. I mean, it's really cheap, and it basically unlocks all of these hoppers right here, and we don't have to do any signals up top. Now we have the same signal continuing all the way through here, and that will also turn off unlocking or unpowering this block right here, allowing this torch to unpower or repower, sorry, unpowering this redstone block or redstone torch right here, allowing all of these to actually unpower. And how this works is this, or each redstone torch powers the block above it, powering this hopper, the hopper next to it. Now, while also unpowering this, we actually unpower this barrel, allowing these two hoppers to unlock, which is just a convenient use of signals. And that's how we allow all the line to go all the way down. Now, we also stop power going to this redstone wire from this comparator, so this repeater stops powering, so it also unlocks these two right here, and allows the shulker box to flow down into the bulk like so. And it'll also update this redstone lamp by temporarily turning off. So, I mean, that is kind of a cool graphic, so you know when items are actually coming into your slice. Now, that is how it unpowers or unlocks. Now, talking about how it relocks, well, it's super simple. We know that we power this observer line, and what that basically does is updates all of these observers to push the redstone block back into its place. So it basically does the reverse of what we just talked about. It extends this, turning this redstone block back here, so this sticky piston can extend and basically do all those signals, so everything relocks. And it's super nice and easy. And that leaves us with the restocking section. Actually, one more thing to mention, we actually have a overflow detection system. So what happens is, if we actually start to overflow any signals coming from either overfilling this barrel right here, or even going up to this comparator right here, if we overflow this, it'll power this line right here to power this comparator, powering this block and powering this note block right here, to extend this sticky piston to bring this redstone torch or redstone block down, to power this sticky piston to move this block of redstone down to power this lamp right here, which indicates, hey, this slice is full. And what will happen is, this is actually a smart system, so once we clear that, this will actually unpower and all will be well and good. So just a handy thing to have, especially when you're sorting like a ridiculous item that you could have a potentially crazy farm for. Now let's talk about the actual box display, and I think this is a super clean box display. And so what we have here is the white shulker box powering this comparator, keeping this redstone repeater on, powering this block, and keeping this line extended. Now what happens when it unpowers is, or the box gets empty, is it unpowers this line, bringing this observer back up, which will update the observer to send a signal here to unpower this redstone torch and power this note block right here. And what also happens is we power or update this observer right here to power its own piston through quasi connectivity, which will update that so it sends signals to these two observers. The one going to this observer powers this repeater to power this line right here, powering this iron door right here, which will send another signal through this to keep this redstone torch unpowered, as well as updating this observer right here to power this block to update, or power this iron door to update this line right here, or all three of these observers. And this will send a signal to here to unlock or power this repeater to unlock or unpower this redstone torch to unlock this hopper and this hopper, allowing the item to travel down into the dispenser. And what also happens is we power this observer right here to power this repeater to lock this top hopper, so we only allow one shulker box to flow through. And this is what makes it a bufferless box display. So we have no shulker box that's stored that we don't want or like can't access at all. Now what also happens is this comparator moves, or no, composter moves up, powering this comparator. At the same time, it updates this observer right here. So it sends signal to this repeater right here to power this sticky piston to move this entire line up, which is important for this signal right here because it'll power unpowering this redstone torch, allowing this redstone torch to power and power this. So it powers this sticky piston to bring the observer up. And then what also happens is this redstone torch will unpower, allowing this redstone torch to power and pushing this gray concrete powder into the shulker box to break it, pushing it into this hopper right here, which we've unpowered coming from this signal, allowing the shulker box to travel into this dropper right here. And then once we retract this, because this signal is only a pulse, what will happen is this will all retract. And what happens is when this moves back, it will actually power this dispenser because when it gets moved here, it'll power this dispenser and then move down. So it'll allow the dispenser to fire, placing the shulker box, and then it'll retract as normal. And the whole system will reset, and then this redstone torch will turn back on, powering this dropper to shoot out the empty shulker box to go down this line right here. And if I turn on full bright, you can see it's just a preservation, so no shulker boxes can get stuck here, or I don't know if it's actually called a preservation water stream, just a no item loss water stream, or however you want to call it, to go down to your empty boxes line. And yeah, how it is a smart restocking bulk. Well, we've talked about, so how is this a smart restocking bulk? Well, there we go. When this chest has an actual item in it, what happens is this comparator line is powered, keeping this redstone torch unpowered, keeping this redstone torch powered, and keeping power to this piston. So this gray concrete stays here. So allowing this comparator to take an output from this composter and keep the slice locked. So, and then what happens is if there's items in this hopper right here, we have a comparator output to power this block and keep this redstone torch off. This line right here is to keep this piston extended, and this is the main check of does this chest have items. This line right here to this redstone torch right here is the check to do we have spare items. So if this is turned off and we do have spare items here in this redstone torch will be off, and this redstone torch will be off, allowing this piston to retract and no signal to come through here. So it unlocks this or turns off this wire and this repeater, as well as and turning off this repeater. So it allows these hoppers right here to unlock, allowing items to start and travel forward. What also happens is it unlocks the entirety of the slice for a little bit. Now, if there aren't items in the spare hopper right here, what'll happen is this redstone torch will be on. So this will turn off, but this sticky piston will stay up because there's no point in bothering and unlocking the entire slice if there's no items to go through. And that would just cause a bunch of lag because when you start up the system and don't have any items, all of the slices would be unlocked, and that would just be kind of a mess. And how we interlock these systems is when this system actually needs shulker boxes, what will happen is it'll take from this chest directly, and this comparator will be able to detect, hey, it's empty, and allow more items to go through. Now, this is where my biggest criticism of the system comes, and the fact that when you empty this, like here, if I just quickly go empty this, what happens is it only lets a few, as you can see right here, because the comparator immediately goes back on as soon as you get a few items, so it only allows 2 shulker boxes to come through. And so, yes, technically it's a smart restocking bulk. Maybe this is just problems with modern versions of the game, but it only allows 2 shulker boxes to come through. So you'd actually have to send a item to get sorted and unlock the entire slice to allow the items to start flowing through, which, I don't know, I think it's a little bit weird, but it's not too much of a big a deal for me. Now, the last feature I want to talk about is the really cool system of how to actually start up all the shulker box displays. And I've talked about this in a bunch of videos, and I say, oh yes, so you basically just want to send power through all of these blocks right here, or these blocks right here, or depending on the box display to get the general system startup. And you can have a button, or the system does not need a button. And this is the first system that I've shown that actually has that system to show how the boxes get started up. And this is through this node block right here, which will update this line right here and send a huge observer line going all the way to here to power all of these observers, which update all the individual slices. And what this does is power this piston to move and update push the composter up if it isn't being powered, but also update this line right here to cause the system to actually run and unlock everything, because you can see there's also power going to here, and that's how the system actually adds a new box into the system. So if I were to destroy this box right here, I actually just ran the system there. Do I take out? Oh, this is gonna be a pain. Okay, let me try over here. So if there's no system, I can put a box, ignore that it's not the same box, and if I actually tick freeze, and then run over here, not the sign, I update this note block right there, and then come here to tick unfreeze, you'll see the signal go all the way here, and update all the slices to run the shulker box system to place the shulker box down. And yeah, I don't know, I just think that's kind of a cool system. And it's really handy, especially when you actually try and use a storage system and you actually have to go in manually and update all the individual shulker box loaders. So it's nice to have this system. But overall, I think this is a super cool and really cheap system for what it is. It's probably one of the cheapest bulks I've seen, and you can obviously make this way cheaper. You can obviously remove this line right here, so that way it makes it even cheaper if you don't want to see whether your slice is filling up, because this is a lot of storage, especially if you're playing single player. But yeah, I just think it's a super cool and clean looking bulk. So yeah, thank you for watching.